So today I'm gonna break down Nyjah Huston's kickflip into 7 simple techniques so that average skaters like you or me can learn how to kickflip like Nyjah Huston. I've also had this goal of kickflipping into a back 50 on the bump to ledge, but I've been scared. So today, after using these 7 techniques, I'm hoping that it will give me the height and the control on my kickflip to be able to do the flip to grind. So technique number 1 is before Nyjah even starts to set up for his kickflip, he almost has like a setup before the setup. Notice how his front foot is over his front bolts. His stance is really wide, and this gives him the stability to quickly shift his foot down into that kickflip position when he's actually ready to do the kickflip. I know this may seem like splitting hairs, like a setup to a setup, but I've personally tried this and I know that having a wider stance before I scoot into my kickflip stance genuinely helps. And if you pay attention, Nyjah Huston is doing this on pretty much every single kickflip that he does. So step 1, cover those bolts, get a nice wide stance, gain your balance, gain your composure, and then you're ready to start getting into the kickflip. The second technique is Nyjah Huston's simple flick hack. I've made a whole video on this. I'll link it right there. Nyjah Huston explained on the 9 Club that he hangs his front foot heel super far off. So he just barely has his toe like behind the bolts. As well, his foot is really up close to the bolts. So from this position, pretty much all he has to do is flick straight up off the corner of the nose. And like Nyjah Huston says, it's a very simple, consistent flick. If you skate looser trucks like me, you're probably gonna feel your board like wobble if you try and hang your foot off too much. So obviously you can play with it and find your own version of this. But the general idea is by having your foot up towards the bolts and having less of your foot on the board, it can make your flick a lot more simple and consistent. The third key is how Nyjah Huston pops his board. And this actually comes down to how he's lifting his front foot. So you'll notice before his front foot moves forward to flick the board, his foot lifts straight up, creating space for the nose of the board to lift up, steep into the air. So that way the board is in a good position to actually flick. So before you even think about moving your foot forward, remember to get your foot up and then over. This allows Nyjah's nose to get higher up in the air, giving him a few extra inches of height on his kickflip without adding any extra effort. Now step 4 is how Nyjah Huston flicks up and forward with his knee first. So notice that wherever his knee goes, his foot is then going to follow. Your leg has a lot more weight behind it than your foot does. So by flicking with your upper leg, aka leading with your knee, that's gonna give you a lot more power and a lot more consistency behind your flick. As well, by flicking slightly up with his knee, that again helps lift the board up into the air. If you do start trying to flick up, you may find that your board starts rocketing. So you may need to start catching a little bit more of the nose as you release that flick with your foot. But I think this is gonna be a huge key for anybody that's trying to kickflip and get their board higher up into the air. Key number 5 is how Nyjah Huston tucks his back leg. So if you do all of those first steps correct, but you do not tuck your back leg, basically you're gonna stop the kickflip from coming up to its max height. So when you execute the first 4 steps properly and then add in tucking that back knee, you're able to get a few more inches of added height, again, without any added effort. This is a technique that hopefully today is gonna help me be able to kickflip up and onto that box into the backside 50-50. Okay, so we're coming down to the last 2 tips. Step number 6, or technique number 6, is the timing of Nyjah Huston's flick. So I went frame by frame to look at Nyjah Huston's timing of his kickflip. From the time that he pops to the time that his wheels touch the ground again is about 32 frames. And out of those 32 frames, he's already finished his flick by frame number 8. So that means he's still in the first quarter of his kickflip and his flick is already finished. By flicking so early, he's able to get the board all the way around and catch it at its peak. But again, he's not just doing a quick flick with his ankle, he's lifting his leg up and then dragging his foot forward, leading with his knee, which is a lot of movement to be doing with his leg in the first 8 frames of the kickflip. It just goes to show how quickly Nyjah Huston is actually lifting up his leg. The faster you lift that leg up off of your board, the faster all of the energy is going to get transferred back into the tail, into the back foot, giving you a better pop. Again, more height with less effort. One way to think of it is that you do the kickflip on the way up. From the halfway mark, you're just landing an ollie. Now, technique number 7 is how Nyjah Huston lands his kickflips. Just like when he was getting ready to take off, his feet are spread really wide. and he's got a really wide, strong base, and he bends his knees to give himself as much stability as possible. So if the ground is rough or something didn't quite go right during the kickflip, maybe he lost his balance, his knees are bent and his feet are wide enough that he's able to catch himself and make up for any imperfections that may have happened along the way. So now with those 7 tips in mind, let's go see if I can kickflip to backside 50-50 grind on the little bump to ledge at the skate park. I'm a little bit scared. I've never done this before, but I know I'm capable. It's just forcing myself to do it. So let's go make it happen. So at first, I wanted to do a bunch of backside 50-50s to basically get the feeling of like the alignment, how I'm gonna be coming at the box out of the bank, and really just have that alignment down so that when I'm kick flipping, it's just like one less thing I have to worry about. After that, I did a bunch of kick flips up onto the box. This was obviously, I just wanted to make sure I'm getting the right height, getting a good flick, catching it, building my confidence that I'm actually gonna be able to get onto this thing. Then from there, I don't know if this step really helped me all that much other than mentally, but I just did a bunch of kickflip 50s on the curb. And arguably the curb is harder because you don't have the launch ramp out, but I wanted to get the feeling of flipping into the lock of the kickflip back 50. Once I actually started trying it on the bump to ledge, I realized just because you have so much more time in the air, it's way easier. It was more of just a mental thing because I'd never kickflipped onto anything other than that curb. I just took so much time flipping onto that I'm not sure whether or not it helped me or hurt me because I just put so much energy into flipping onto that curb. But then finally when I started trying the flips onto it, I was really intimidated, wasn't really sure how to start, but I basically just kind of like flicked one away and landed on top of the ledge and just kind of kept flicking, just kind of rolling up to it and flicking it, just feeling it out until finally I felt like I was ready to like stay on top of one. It didn't take me too long to start getting really close because really it's just like getting the right alignment and then getting the right flick. Like it's really a simple trick. I mean, it's essentially the same thing as just kick flipping up onto that box. It's just, it has to be so precise to get locked in on your trucks. So a bunch of times I ended up, you know, getting one truck locked in or landing on top of the box and then riding into the grind, basically getting like as close as I possibly could to actually doing the trick without doing the trick, which was really frustrating. But finally, after a lot of trying, it finally clicked. We got one. Super stoked. And then the homie filmed one for me for Instagram. Shout out Hans. The angle is perfect. Super stoked on it. Just, I've been thinking about this one for a while. So needless to say, we made today a Friday. And I hope you guys make every single day a Friday. And I'll catch you guys in the next video. Peace.